T podcast fans. Hey guys, I cannot begin to explain the level of excitement and just I don't even know the words other than excitement and like all these different emotions running through my head with the guest that I have today. So, you guys know, right? I always say that, I'm not here to speak negatively about any business. I'm not here to, well, I'm going to speak negatively about the business, but I'm not here to like defame anybody. That's Amway or any of the tools businesses. Now, I probably won't be mentioning any of the tools businesses specifically, except for maybe when it pertains to myself. So if you hear that name and you think I'm defaming you, I'm not. I promise. I'm not trying to get sued. Okay, I'm a little fish. Amway's a big fish. You're not going to get me. Anyways, so you guys, we always talk, right, about parents and what it was like being in the business for us and the guilt that we have and what it was like when we had to take our kids at 2 a.m. to 7-Eleven because we didn't drop the message and having to send up a Kate message being like, hey, I finally got a message, and we're getting praised because we decided to go to that 7-Eleven at 2 a.m. But nobody's thinking about the fact that we had to drag our child because maybe somebody's a single parent or we didn't have childcare, right? So we think about the child, and I don't know that we often get the opportunity to hear, well, what's it like for the kids who were raised in Amway? And that's a burning question that I have had. So I finally have the amazing opportunity to get to speak with someone who actually can answer, at least from their perspective, what that was like. If you guys are on TikTok and you're not following her already, please go follow and let's welcome the anti MLM kid, which is what we're going to call her, by the way. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And I'm just so excited to chat with you. It's going to be great.
I'm so grateful. I think I told you this before, but I was like so starstruck when you messaged me because
No way.
I've been wanting to talk to you for so long because you offer this very unique perspective that I don't think myself or any of my listeners have heard before. Like, you were raised in the tools business.
Yes. Yep. For
That's
decades.
So I have to ask for anybody who's got the burning question, are you actively in Amway?
I am not. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, I dabbled. I never actually really even tried. I dipped some toes in, I think more because I knew that it was expected of me. But it always felt so wrong and weird. And I'm so thankful for that. Because I think being raised in it, you do see behind the curtain. You do understand the reason behind the manipulation. I've had many conversations helping me understand why certain things were said to get a certain result out of people. And I think my folks were trying to help me understand how to quote unquote build the business, but what it really ultimately did for me is help me see like, wait a second, maybe this isn't who I want to be. I don't want to step into these shoes. And so dabbled a little bit, but very quickly was like, all right, back it up.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, I guess your TikTok username, right? What you go by, the anti-MLM kid, kind of makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
You're now anti-MLM. So that's how we connected was I had seen your TikToks and we kind of interacted that way. And I just like the burning questions that I have, just like what inspired you to start your TikTok? And like what was your biggest motivation behind speaking out?
I think it was a direct result of a very long, slow burn of sort of deconstructing what I had been raised in. Because there's this step of like, okay, Amway's not for me. Then there's the step of no, MLM is not for me. Then there's the step of, many years later, potentially, at least for me, of like, okay, what really was this and the history behind it. And it was like it's like an onion kind of metaphor of all these different layers of understanding of what my life was, which is a very trippy experience. But I had listened to the Dream podcast, and I think it was on my second listen through when they do their specific episodes about Amway and the history of Amway, that I just started kind of searching on different like, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram, like Amway, and just seeing what came up. And there was a TikTok that came up of a woman talking about a recruitment attempt and how hurt she was by it. And somebody had said, Amway's not a pyramid scheme. And I was like, nope, reply. And I just made a TikTok about like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And this is why. And then that led to somebody saying something. And and then before I knew it, it was just, that's now what my TikTok is I just do videos answering questions for the uh, about what people are experiencing and or replying to people who are very clearly in an MLM, specifically in Amway. And I believe that they are searching for an answer. Why else are you there? Why else are you having such a stirred emotion of feeling like you need to react? So that's my opportunity to be like, I don't think you're gonna change your mind today, but I'm gonna plant a seed with you right now. And it's gonna sit there and it's gonna fester, and maybe eventually it'll get you out. And so I just try to meet people with like compassion and helping them see like the facts. And when their mind is ready to digest it, I have every faith that it will, because that's just what I hope will happen. So, that's, yeah, that's why.
I mean, I love that it started with a back and forth with somebody.
Yes.
You're like, no, I have this impulse. You have to understand that this is something that, and you felt like you had to say something. And I absolutely commend you on that, because when you see an injustice and you feel an inkling that you're like, this person should probably know something. I love the fact that you went for it. And so
Thank
I think
you.
it's really important for people to understand that there is a difference between complaining and advocacy. What would you say is the biggest difference between what people claim that you're doing, right? That you're just complaining, you're just a hater, versus what you're actually doing in your advocacy work?
That's awesome. I appreciate that so much. That question, there's people that are go on and say, I get a lot of, well, that was just your experience, or you just had a bad experience. And to me, complaining would just be like, you're right, I just had a bad experience, and these are all the things that happened to me, which also sort of has like, that is also valid. Like, to say that a complaint is not valid is a thought terminating cliche. Like, if I went to a restaurant and I got sick, I would complain. I would say something. And anybody else that would want to go to that restaurant would want to know my complaint, right? So for any of us to share our experiences and have a complaint about something that we were promised, that we were led to believe would happen, that was not what actually happened, we were manipulated, like, it's okay to complain about these injustices and then take that to another level of like, okay, now let's educate about what was behind what happened to me. And that, at least in this realm, and for me, where I come from, is I did have a bad experience, but so do 99% of the people. The common denominator is the machine that has pulled all of us into this thing, and that trains people to lie to people and manipulate them. Yes, that is worth complaining about. And also, let's get educated about it and help other people understand it too, so that they can avoid it. Because it sucks. Like, nobody wants to, when you see what it is, you're like, holy shit, what? Like, no, no.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I absolutely agree. I think that like, I don't love the word complaining, but I know that a lot of people happen to use it in the comment section of your TikToks. And these, like you said, are the people who are actively involved. And you're right. I think you're right when you say they're looking for an answer, because you're right. Why else would they be there? They had to have searched something that put your TikTok into their algorithm, which
Yeah.
brought up Amway. Because no one's, let's be real, no one's on there advertising Amway on TikTok. Nobody. You don't have
Mm-mm.
the sponsorship link from Amway. That's not happening. So,
No.
so that's the only way that people can find these things. And it always makes me wonder, like, obviously, like you said, they're looking for answers, but like the motivation behind it, like what was it that happened within their like line of sponsorship, or what their upline said, or somebody said something that triggered them to go online and look up Amway. And it always makes me wonder too if they're just looking to almost reaffirm what their upline is saying, right? Like, oh, all the haters are on there because they're just quitters. They didn't love their family enough, and things of that nature. And it kind of fuels them because they always feel like they have to argue. And actually, on that same note, on this whole idea that your upline's telling you how to think, you said that your parents, right? So your parents were in Amway. They were in one of the tools businesses many, many years back.
Yes. Yes.
From what you know, was it the same back then?
Yes. Yes. That's something that I find it genuinely like gives me chills to think about because it's so scary to me that the mentality that people built the business with, and I like, please, everybody, there are air quotes when I say build the business because it is neither being built nor is it a business, but moving on. Um, that yes, the mentality around how you talk to people, the books that you read, the kind of toxic positivity, the methodologies are all the exact same. But when it was in 1980s, it was analog and you had to be much more physically involved versus now it's digital and things are just on a different platform, but the mindset is all the exact same because, and you know this, it's always replicate, duplicate. And it has been that way for decades. And that is why, like, it is so nefarious because it can work so well. They found the secret sauce of like how to emotionally manipulate people, but also if we know what to look out for, we can stay safe because it is so predictable, because they have been doing the same thing the whole time. If we can teach enough people about it, they can be kept at least safer because they know what to see, they know what to identify. They know that when somebody compliments their shoes in Target, to run the opposite direction because that's like a predictable like transition point for someone to try to recruit you. Don't let people compliment your shoes at Target, no matter how cute they are.
Yeah. And if you do compliment somebody's shoes, don't like, oh, I was just complimenting your shoes. Okay, bye. Like, if
Right,
you really
right.
want to say like they have nice shoes, like just make sure you like reiterate in some fashion that you are not there to recruit them into anything. They just got nice shoes. But absolutely,
Exactly.
and that's the wild part. You're right. They figured it out. Like, how
Mhm.
do we manipulate enough people over enough period of time?
Yeah.
And for it to be the same for so long, it surprises me. And I say that as somebody who I was in gosh, it's 2024. I got out in 2019. So was that 5 years ago? So I've been out for 5 years. And over the course of time, the only thing that has changed is just how their manipulation tactics have changed a little bit and how they're getting a little bit better at lying in different ways.
Right.
And that's crazy enough. But okay, yeah. So your parents long time ago got
Yeah. Yeah.
into Amway. What year did they get in? And do you happen to know like how each of them got involved?
Um, yes. So they got in around the 1977, 78 timeframe, both as singles. My dad, I think my understanding is that he was recruited by his boss. And my mom, it was like a friend. So way back when, the process was not, I don't even think it was called the process because it really was just, hey, do you want to do a thing? Come to the open meeting, yes or no. So it was a much less involved kind of series of events to get people signed up. So, people would just say, like, come to this meeting with me tonight, and then they would just be off to the races from then. But yes, my parents got in individually as singles. They met each other within a couple of years, and from the moment they started dating, I think they were married within 8 or 9 months. And then I was born shortly after, whatever, a year later. Yeah,
Wow. Okay,
yeah,
that's like the great grandparents of Amway. It's like when they talk to
uh-huh,
the newer IBOs, it's almost like those are like the ancestors
yeah,
of Amway. And it
yeah.
really goes back that far. And so
Yeah.
wow. So then you, of course, you came about. And from as far back as you can remember, what was your like first like memory or your first introduction to what your parents were doing?
I don't remember there ever being an introduction, only because it was just always part of our existence. My first convention, I was 3 weeks old. Um, and my grandfather was very, very angry that I was taken to this huge convention hall at 3 weeks old. Um, and just a side note, like this is just, it speaks to part of the manipulation is that my whole life that was seen as such a funny joke that my mom had to like take me into the bathroom. And because there's no mother's rooms or like nursing rooms or any sort of parent facilities to take care of a child back then. And it was, your grandfather was so upset and ha ha ha, but because it's like worn as a badge of honor within the business, right? Like I'm willing to do this because I believe in it so much and I'm working so hard and I'm bringing the next generation in. Look at it. Like it's a pat on the back kind of attaboy situation. But my whole life, I just product pickups because again, everything was analog back then. So my mom would put the orders in for their downline. The UPS person would show up. I would help her kind of separate out all the products. And every Friday night, somebody would come over and it was just everybody would come and pick up their products. It was a house full of people every Friday night. Every Sunday night was team phoning. I think it was like Tuesday or Wednesday night, they went to their weekly meeting. Every night, my dad was out recruiting on the phone a lot. That's what I remember the most is so many phone calls, so many phone calls. But because their business was their life, we had to adjust around that. So when dad was on the phone, nobody was speaking. Everybody was like hushed tones, be really, really quiet. Yeah, and like try to pick up any kid that was there whose parents brought them along with myself. We all went upstairs and played very quietly. Like everything was just adjust for the parents to do the thing with Amway.
Yeah.
I do think, my parents are incredible human beings. I'm very, very lucky that they are my parents. I also know that they have been victimized by this machine and sucked into something. And they've been working for a dream for decades. And it breaks my heart because I know what incredible human beings they are. And I know how it's affected our relationship. I know how it's affected, the amount of healing that I've had to do over all of these years. But it was always just such, it like was like another character in the story of our house. It was like, here are all the family members, here's the pets, and here's Amway. And it just was. And it was, our existence was Amway always, 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 always.
Wow. Wow. But that makes sense.
Yeah.
I when you were talking about your mom bringing you at 3 weeks old, you're absolutely right. Those sacrifices that people are
Mm-hmm.
willing to make, and to hear that even back then, it was like, of course, you've said that it's the exact same, but it still shocks me that it was
Yeah.
the same back then because I would imagine like how much I would think that people would be more strict back then, but I guess not. And the same notion that if you sacrifice, you're showing them you're showing your team, right, how dedicated you are. And
Yeah.
that's a lot. And I could totally see I'm with grandpa. My dad would also be furious if I took
Mm-hmm.
my kid to an
Yes.
Amway convention.
Yeah.
Um, but literally from the day you were born, it was all Amway all the time.
Yeah.
Did you guys
Yeah.
ever have like after school activities or were you able to join any sports with your parents being in Amway?
Yes, I was. This is what's so interesting about at least my existence with Amway is there's this dichotomy, right? Because they were taught to dream big. And so it's like, hey, child, what is your dream? We want you to pursue your dream. And I had a dream. I had an after school a hobby that I wanted to become a career, and I was able to do it in college. I was able to have it as a career for a little while. But they supported the dream because the dream, it's like it's always about the dream, right? Like, but in the background, it was go ahead and do whatever your dream is. Just know that Amway is going to be the fallback, that you will always have Amway. And so it's like that's what's so interesting about being a child in Amway specifically, at least in my home. you do make these assumptions of like, well, they must have been out recruiting, so of course they weren't at home, right? They missed all of your events.
Yeah.
And yes, a lot was missed, but like the big events they were always there for. But it wasn't, it's but but when you're like weeping to your parent and they don't know how to like synthesize a sad emotion because they've been trained to be positive for decades before you got to this place where you needed your parent when you're expressing a sad emotion. Like that's the kind of places where they didn't show up because they didn't have the capacity to anymore, and or they were just trying to fall in line with this idea of a positive mental space will get you whatever you want in life, and you don't even worry about like the doubts and the fear and the worry. Those are useless emotions. Keep those shut down. And if you as a child ever need to explore those emotions, you're denied the opportunity because really you just need to change your mindset and everything will be better. And when your heart is broken in high school, it doesn't work that way. Do you know what I mean? Or like when you're a little kid and you just need some comfort, like it's not a one for one. And so there were other ways that they were not able to show up because and that's the other thing. It's like they really did think that they were doing right. They thought that they were doing what was best, but toxic positivity is not best. Being able to show
Right.
up as a whole ass human in the place you're supposed to be the safest, that is what is best. Um, and so that's the place that is been the time that has been the most dedicated to healing is those emotional like disconnects. But the other piece is that it never went unnoticed to me that when they were there, you know, I always had to wonder like, okay, who are they going to try to recruit while they're here with
Gosh.
me?
Yeah.
So, and that was always just something that I was ready for. Whenever we would go out to dinner, the server might, be somebody that was sharp. And so they, how long have you been working here? Do you like working here? Is this where you want to work in 5 years? No? Well, I have an opportunity, blah, 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 Um,
Yep.
so it was just constant. Yeah, it was, I think that my parents genuinely did everything that they thought was best. And that is why I'm so like I have such a fire in my belly to educate people because anybody that has a child, you are told that you are doing this for your child. You are told that you are making a better future for your child. You are, but when your kid is weeping because they don't want you to go away for another weekend, like what are you
Uh-huh.
missing? Like why are you going somewhere else and yet still thinking that it's for your child? And that's like one of the biggest lies and manipulation is that the idea of a child is just leveraged in such a way and poisoned in such a way that these people are genuinely taking the parents away from their children. And it's heartbreaking. So if you're thinking about joining Amway, don't do it because your kids are not going to be
Wow.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, that was a fantastic explanation of, you're like they were physically there for some things, but the emotional aspect is like what you really craved and needed, especially when you're young and you don't know what the hell you're doing. And wow. And that again, I'm probably going to say this 1,000 times over again, but like it still shocks me that the toxic positivity dates back in these tools businesses till the very beginning. This
Yeah.
whole notion that you cannot be negative has been around for over 50 years.
Mhm.
And the amount of trauma that that causes is a lot. And I absolutely commend you as well for being like, you're so empathetic to what your parents went through. And I have to say I am as well because I mean, not by any means to the extent or the length of time, but I was that person. I was
Yeah.
like, I actually thought like, yeah, this is going to be my future. I thought for sure that I was doing what was best for my child. And when you're talking about, you're like not wanting them to go to another meeting or out of town. And I've always wondered that too, because that you're absolutely right that they use children, right? They want people to have kids. And then when they have those kids, they're like using the children as this is why you're
Mhm.
doing this. And they're
Yeah.
always saying, oh, well, we spend more time with our children. than you guys do working a 9 to 5. But it sounds like that's not, I mean, I would know personally, but like in your experience, that's not true.
No, it's not true at all. And that's the other thing. Like, okay, so like I work a 9 to 5, then my evenings are dedicated to my family. I get to do what I want. I don't have to worry about stepping away to take a phone call. But still to this day, it does not matter. When the phone call rings, the priority is whoever is on the end of that phone line, because that
Yeah.
person needs some sort of advice or some sort of counseling or some sort of pick yourself up again and try, or here talk. Like, it's the strategy always, you have to, as someone who has been in Amway for a very long time, I watch my parents constantly reiterating, this is the mentality behind it, and these are the ways you need to think, and it's just, that's always where the priority lies, is helping other people stay positive. And it's so bizarre. It's
Yeah.
so bizarre. Yeah. Yeah.
And if you guys are listening, because I know I have some listeners who were not in an MLM or a cult for that matter, it's it sounds crazy. Okay, I promise I know it does, but it's so real. It's so real. I mean, quite literally, you cannot, and it sounds like it's always been this way, be negative. If you have the worst possible thing happen, I hope, and I talked about this, a little bit of a trigger warning here, but you will never know who's dying inside next to you because maybe somebody had a miscarriage happen and they still have to go to the function that day, whether it's a board plan, a meet and greet, or a major function or a rally or whatever they happen to be. And that person has to pretend, I'm good. I'm great.
Yeah.
You're really lucky to be here with who you're with. But really, you're like, I don't want to fucking talk to anybody right now. And you don't have that opportunity to be negative. And that actually leads me to another portion is because you can never be negative. Did you ever see any like genuine friendships throughout the time that you saw your parents in Amway? Because I mean, from what I understand and from what I had experienced is that when you can't, especially when they say you can't pass negative downline or pass negative at all, do you ever really even know a person?
Exactly. That, period. That's the tweet. Like, do you ever really know a person if they can't show up to the relationship as a whole ass human being? And that means feeling sad sometimes. And that means making mistakes. And that means like having a life that has tragedy but it also, yes, of course, it also means the highs, but to pretend like that's all that ever exists or that's all that's ever worth validating, then you are quite genuinely like dissecting a human being. You're not allowing them to be their whole selves. I believe too that, and I'm not a psychologist. This is just kind of some ideas that I've formulated just from seeing my own experience. But if someone has cut off that part of themselves, how do they even show up in their life? Like, any relationship is going to be affected. And that's what brings me back to like the relationship I have with my parents is, I love them. I don't believe that they really know me. And that makes me so sad because I know that they want to. I know that they think they do, but I can't, experiencing like, okay, let me go to them for advice. And you get like it is what it is, thought terminating cliche, because that's what they've been taught. Like, that's not comforting, right? And it affects every single relationship. And I think that includes the relationship you have with yourself, because you've even become cut off from yourself. Because it's just a whole half of the breadth of what you are capable of is just turned off. What does that mean? Tell me that a person can be healthy like that. Like, there's no way. There's no way.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's such a wild concept to really think about is the way people in Amway, especially people who are still actively involved or had been involved for a long period of time, you have to look and see how much of you is you and how much of it is just what you're ingrained to know what you have to be, the robotic aspect that you have to portray. And
Mhm.
I even still, I think I struggle with that personally, like this idea that I have to just stay positive. And like I'm almost afraid to like share like I had a fucking bad day. Like sometimes I
Right.
feel like, oh my God, I shouldn't share that. Like somebody's gonna be like mad at me for sharing that because I'm gonna make their day bad. Like they would and correct me if I'm wrong or if maybe it was worded the same way, but they would always say, you don't want to bring your cloud onto somebody else. That's how they would put it. They'd be like, you don't want to ruin somebody else's day because you had a bad day. And it
Yeah.
becomes this you're being selfish if you express these negative emotions to anybody else outside of your upline because supposedly your upline's going to quote counsel you through it. I'm again, air quotes.
Yeah, exactly. You're so right. Everything is through the filter of how is another person going to be affected. So as a human being in that structure, I mean, and you see, I kind of think of it as like if every single person is like their own little bubble, right? And all of these little bubbles are operating with this idea of like worrying so much about popping somebody else's bubble, but then as an adult, you can't get validated. Like that just, you're being trained to be a people pleaser in such a dramatic way that literally nothing about you or your existence is validated unless it is a benefit to someone else. Is Are you helping your upline? Are you helping someone else? Are you disappointing someone by not being there? Are you helping other kids, mommies and daddies? Like everything is external. Everything is what are you doing for everybody else? You as a person, we're going to tell you that you matter. But everything we're actually going to direct you to do is going to reinforce the idea that you actually don't. So you are more than willing to self sacrifice constantly. And they need you to do that in order to stay indoctrinated. They need the indoctrination to make you want to be so self sacrificing so that you can serve the cult itself. And every cult does that. Every cult removes the autonomy in order to make you like the perfect little worker bee. And in commercial cults, they just happen to do it with the guise of financial freedom. That is just the most bold-faced lie. It's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's and I should have asked this so much earlier, but are your parents still active in Amway?
they are. Yeah, they,
And just to keep it just super vague, did they ever make it to that diamond level?
no, they have not.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 2 to 5 year plan. And I'm so sorry to laugh because I don't know like what
No,
other emotion to express. So I
it's
apologize.
okay.
But like what was supposed to be 2 to 5 years is now 50 years and there's no precious gemstone.
Right, right. And I'll just say too to everybody, I simultaneously laugh and like because it is, and it's so it's like you laugh because you don't want to cry. That's the kind of thing where it's like it is absurd when you just look at it. You're like, tell me you've got to be freaking kidding me. But then that speaks to the dynamic of the indoctrination, the dynamic of the manipulation. We are not freaking joking around when we tell you that it is dangerous. And I'm 50 years in, 50 plus math is hard, but somebody do the math for me. But yes, a long, long time, many, many decades. And they are still as sold out to the idea of going diamond. And the they blame themselves for not getting there sooner.
That's devastating. That really
Yeah,
is because you think about all those years ago, right? 50 years ago, they were these what were they in their 20s when they got in like early
yeah,
20s?
yeah,
So you've got these bright, bubbly spring chicken 20-year-olds who they're kind of getting in at the ground level. Like they
yeah.
were like in when the grandparents of these tools businesses were really getting started. And I'm sure at that time, like people really did actually think that it was possible because we didn't have the social media that we have today. We weren't able to, cross reference stories or talk to other people. Like you just had your own experience.
Mhm.
And then to see that evolution of these bright spring chickens who were like, we're going diamond. And then you kind of just see the individuals who are now just would you say it's fair to say that like a lot of it is they're in for association? Like that's just what they know and that's like what keeps them drawn to it other than the financial aspect?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because with Amway, as you know, with any other cult, they need you to, your whole life becomes that cult, right? So, and I think we talked before, but I see it as like these pillars of a person's identity is, your business, your finances, your religion, and how you associate with your government, your country, the politics, like these three huge identity markers. And when all of them are folded in on themselves inside of a multi-level marketing company, how can you like it? That's why when people leave, sometimes they really, really struggle. Sometimes their depression becomes so intense that they harm themselves. They like it's because it is so existential. It is so you've given over your life to this thing. The only thing that you really have when we all get here, we have choice, right? And to give that over under the lie that you are consciously making an effort to better yourself and your family and your country and further God's word and all of these things, but really it's just it's play acting. But to be in a place where you can't see that because you are in such a solid echo chamber is, I mean, it's terrifying when you think of it that way. And that's why cults, man, they know what they're freaking doing. That's why there's so many of them. Like they are not to be played with. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I'm gonna say wow like 1,000 times over.
It's
I believe
okay.
you. Just, just because it's so like dark. Like that's
Yeah.
such a dark concept that yeah, that's kind of all they have at this point
Yeah.
is to hold on to this hope that they've been taught to know over the last 50 years. And I can imagine that I mean at some point you just kind of have to ride the wave.
Yeah.
This is it. This
Yeah.
is the lifestyle. That's it. And then we're in it for life.
Yeah.
And it just shocks me. And I always think about when they say it's a 2 to 5 year plan and how good they are at manipulation, right? Because if you started a job, right, and they tell you, oh, in this year you're going to make I don't know, some like $50,000. And if that doesn't happen over the course of a year, you're going to look for a new job. Like
Yeah.
you're going to be like, oh, they lied to me. I'm not making the money that I thought I was going to. I'm just going to go. And that's just a job, treating it like a regular job. The difference with this is that we're told 2 to 5 years. You would think, oh, it's been 5 years. I haven't gone diamond, let alone platinum or made any money for that
Mhm.
matter, but they keep people involved. And what has been kind of in your experience and what you've seen throughout time, how the hell are they doing?
Oh my gosh. I remember being a little kid and being explained, having it explained to me that the goal ultimately is getting people from one function to the next function. And the lights, the music, the grandeur, the excitement, the lack of
Yeah.
sleep, the emotions, all the things, right?
Yeah.
And seeing all these people and how successful they are, and they're pointing to the people in the nosebleeds and saying, "We were there once, and look at us now." And they're doing all the things to get every single like emotion and hormone like just firing on all cylinders. And then they keep you in all of these meetings for all the weeks until the next one. And I mean, that is the only, when I think of like what has kept them in so long, my first answer is I don't know. And then my second answer is I think that they were so sold out from the very beginning, and the people that are around them know how to keep them there is kind of where I end up. Because
Yeah.
I just don't know. It blows my mind too. It really, really does.
Right.
So long.
I love that you say that. And the fact that you were told that as a kid. Again, these are things that have been around since the fucking beginning. Living function to function. They would constantly drill that into us. They would say, by the time you get to the next function, you will feel tattered up. You will feel like you are just inches from the finish line, and then you get revitalized at the function. And they have them quarterly because it takes 3 months for a person to be so like down on their luck. But then if you get them to a function, they're more likely to stick around because you're right. Functions, it sounds like, have always been this exciting atmosphere. And you're absolutely right. They're like, we were up in the bleachers, and they're
Yeah.
absolutely right. But then we were down on the floor, and now we're up here, and you could be like us too. And then they have the friggin' music playing, and the music that they play, I don't know if it was like that back then, but it's always some cheesy shit.
Yep.
And it really is the opportunity to feel so alive, but you're also still, even like you said, you're going to all these board plans, and you're staying out late to continuously recruit people. I mean, all of these things fall into one of four categories on Stephen Hassan's bite model.
Yep.
And those are things that I had not recognized until I was introduced to Stephen Hassan's bite model, which
Mhm.
is absolutely insane because I didn't realize that keeping you up late at night was, in a way, sleep deprivation. I didn't realize that when, because, and again, I don't know if it was the same way at functions, or if you had this experience or your parents had this experience, but like we were very heavily preached, like, don't eat at these functions, just eat like your Amway products. And that's like your limitation. And it's all like they would quite literally say, like, oh, you want people who are starving. We were quite literally like, that's the energy that was filling us. That's the only thing that we had after going to these functions. We were kept up until god awful hours of the night. We were quite literally starving. And the only thing keeping us alive was listening to this gemstone on stage come up with some bullshit way of saying the exact same thing over and over again
Mhm.
and keeping us being like, you know what, that could be me.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I remember growing up being told you can sleep when you're dead more times than I can possibly count, even possibly count. And yeah, like people having the coolers of like that you can bring in Amway food. You can
Yes.
bring in like excess and perfect water and food bars and protein shakes and all the things, and they'll let you do that into the convention hall. But like the concessions are closed down. There's nobody manning any. You're in this space, and heaven forbid if you leave to get anything, shame on you. Yeah, and you can just wait until the night owl to go eat a stack of pancakes at Denny's and listen to somebody else spout off about the exact same stuff that you just heard from stage, that you had heard on the tapes last week, that you had heard in the open the week before, that you had heard. Like, it's all the same. It's just wash, rinse, repeat over and over and over again. And it always has been. It has always been that. Like, work harder. If you aren't making anything, then that's your fault. Shame on you. Come back to us to get motivated. Do that
Yes.
over and over and over and over and over again. Just, it's more flowery depending on who you're listening to, but that's it.
Well, just every terminology that you're using, this is such proof that every tools business is the same. The
Yeah.
term night owl was something that I'd heard, of course, when I was in Worldwide, and this is across the board. All
Yeah.
fucking tools business, you guys. There's so many different tools businesses that anybody can be a part of if you guys aren't already aware. Which I didn't fucking know that until I even left the one that I was a part of. But you're absolutely right. If you are not what they tell you to be, you are worthless. Like, are you
Yeah.
even trying hard? Like, you obviously don't love your family enough to not eat anything but fucking Amway products, which, by the way, not even respectfully, I hated their products so much. Well, I have to ask though, how you probably grew up eating and drinking everything Amway and all their
Everything,
cleaning products.
everything, everything, everything. Okay, listen, Glister is disgusting. Glister does not smell good on your breath. You did not clean your mouth with Glister. Try again. Secondly, double X tastes disgusting. It's awful. And I used to, I was given my vitamins every day, but I would hide them behind the couch because they were so gross. Or I would like try to flush them down the toilet. They were so nasty, like so nasty. But yeah, like, and the skincare, I started skincare when I was like 11 years old, like cosmetics, all the cosmetics parties at my mom's house, like every cleaning product you can possibly imagine. Yes, everything. Every single thing was an Amway product if it was available through Amway. You cannot buy a negative product because apparently consumables
Yes.
have a moral like barometer. Okay, fine. Um, you cannot buy a negative product unless Amway has disconnected or doesn't have it through a partner store. Then you're allowed to go to Walgreens or Walmart or wherever, and then you can purchase, whatever it is. It's just okay, so it was a negative product when you did have those toner pads or whatever random thing, the vacuums, the Dorothy vacuums that they used to have way back in the day. They were called Dorothy because the wind power was so strong. Tornado.
Oh
Um,
my God, that's hilarious.
so like you can't buy anything but a Dorothy vacuum until Dorothy vacuums are not profitable anymore, and then they stop selling them. So now you can, so now all those negative vacuums are totally fine to purchase because now the moral barometer has shifted. I mean, like, no. Yeah, yeah,
Wow. I mean,
yeah.
you're not wrong. Yeah, Glister was terrible. I hated using it, but I had to use it, right? If they
Yeah.
caught me with brand X, God, they had this one. I there was a story that we were told, and I don't know if your parents ever experienced this or if you've heard this or if you've seen this, but there was a platinum where his emerald came in to do a plan at his house, right? He went through his cupboards and quite literally was like showing his brand X, his negative products, and throwing them into like a trash bag and showing like you need to be duplicatable. If you can, you need to buy this from your own business.
I had heard about people going in and checking, but like they don't have any boundaries. There's
No,
no boundaries around anything, around what you are willing to ask someone to do, what you are expected to do, the disrespect that you're expected to like just hand on to someone that you're supposed to be caring about, and then equally the amount of disrespect you are expected to just take and pretend that that's somehow good for you. It's just, it boggles
violating.
my mind. It's
Yeah, it's when I heard that, what's funny is the emerald who did that. I don't know if he's an emerald today, but I hate this specific emerald very, very passionately because of just how like shitty of a person he is. Because I quite literally just freaking hate this guy. Um, just because what he did to me personally, I don't know how
right.
far back
Yeah.
you've gone, but I talked about it. If you guys
Yes.
haven't heard,
Yes.
this guy, I was at a thing and my kid went missing and he didn't fucking help me. Fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy.
Sorry,
No.
but it's true. Like well, that's a good indication of the fact that they don't give a fuck.
Right.
But the the products, um, what was it like as an adult? Like just in regards to the products, to go buy things that were not Amway. Like when did you start buying things that were not Amway?
I think I was in college. Um, and I remember there being guilt. I had a lot of guilt about like buying brand X toothpaste. Now though, I'm like, oh, you mean I can buy mascara for $4.99 and it works? Hell yeah.
And
Like,
it
let's
works
do
better.
that. Right. It works better. Like, I don't need some sort of like crazy expensive mascara. Yeah, there was a lot of guilt initially. I also remember when I finally decided to empty my cupboards of all of the stuff that I'd been stockpiling that I was getting as gifts. That was incredibly freeing too, to just throw everything away because it's like I don't use it. I don't need to accept these as gifts. I don't need to keep these in my home. I don't need to pretend that they're doing me any good, and just throwing them away was very freeing. So yeah, it's gone the whole length. Now that I'm at a place of being much more healed than I was, it's incredibly freeing. I remember the day that I threw away two enormous air purifiers, and I like lifted them up over my head and threw them into the big like trash receptacle at the dump, and I watched them break into a million pieces, and I felt something like shift in my brain. I was like, oh, thank God. Like just the relief and the power and the choice, the level of choice that I felt in that moment, which I realize might sound so silly, but like when you have been in a place of just, there's so many expectations for so long of how to show up for certain people that are in your life, or for this idea of what should be, or for this, quote unquote business. Like you feel like your choice has been taken away because you need to maintain some sort of sense of obligation or whatever to like that this is a good thing. And so sure, I'll take more double X, whatever. It's like, no, I don't want that in my life. I don't want it. I don't need it. It takes up space. I don't want to look at it anymore. And to be like, I never even plugged them in. They were sitting in my garage for years, and finally just throwing them away was like, hell freaking yeah. Yeah. I don't know what that rabbit trail came out of, but there you go.
No, it's okay. And that's a really good explanation of just how traumatizing that organizations like the tools businesses can be. I mean, you have Amway, right? That's the product side of things. So I think that they're bad, absolutely. It's the
Yeah.
tools business side that is what makes it so disgusting. Like I said, I still think Amway's bad. They have their own guilt in this,
Hmm.
but the tools businesses are what really just take it to the next level. And for you to see something as, I mean, if anybody would be like, oh, it's just an air, it's not just an air purifier.
Right.
That represents Amway. That represents something that had caused so much hurt in your life. And fuck that air purifier.
Yeah.
Like seriously, it's
Oh,
crazy, but it makes sense.
yeah.
And through the evolution of like your youth and kind of coming into your own as an adult, you said that you felt a lot of pressure to join Amway. At what
Yeah.
point did you finally decide like, okay, I'm going to join Amway?
It was after college. I took about a 3 week side detour to join Cutco. Don't think I told you that part before. That was fun. Hated that.
That's okay.
Side note, they're just as manipulative. And when I quit,
Love it.
he was incredibly cruel, and so mean. But anyway, as they're wont to do. Um, yes, went to college. I got married right out of college. And I had always known it was just an expectation that in order for me to be successful on any level, I would have to join Amway. And you can't join Amway by yourself. Your spouse has to join too, of course, because the whole house has to be sold out to Amway, because that's what you are taught through these lines of sponsorship. So my ex-husband and I joined, piddled around, like nothing was ever done. We went to all the meetings, we went to all the things, um, and then kind of phased out. And then when we got divorced, being a single mom, it's like, okay, I need to make money. And so that's when I really started back into Amway again. I think I tried to recruit two people, one of which is my husband, when we were dating. But it never felt right. I never, I couldn't get myself to do it. But also there were things that were happening. My ex-husband was building it and he was being more active, and it the people that are active in the business get the attention, right? They get the adoration and the commitment and the let me bend over backwards to help you get to a function or whatever it is. And when you're watching that happen to your ex-husband that was not a good person, and you're like, the morality of what was the decisions that were being made was incredibly off-putting. But I still tried to do it despite that. And then I had some incredibly misogynistic things happen where trying to build it as a single woman was very much viewed as lesser. Um, Physically being boxed out from conversations, physically being taken by the hand by other women and drug away from my own father because he was the guest speaker and I wasn't allowed access to what he had to say because I'm a woman. Like, that's literally my dad, dude. What are you talking about?
Mm.
And so I again like stepped back. Fast forward to when my husband and I were dating, and I was telling my parents about how much I love this man and that I thought that, okay, this is the one, knowing that I was going to have to try to get him into Amway. Because again, like that indoctrination is still so deep in your head that I just kind of knew that I was going to be expected to recruit him and that we were going to have to build the business. Because again, like that idea of choice, there's an obligation that you have to step into and you have to make your life, and you kind of forget that you have options, right? And so
Yeah.
I tried to recruit him. He was immediately like, this is nuts. Absolutely not. And in a last ditch effort, we went to a leadership conference that my parents invited us to after we got engaged. I was like, okay, fine, we'll go to one last thing. And it was leadership. The first night you're separated, men and women, as you know. And because of course you are. On the woman's side, it was like one ballroom that had like one of those like retractable walls, you know? So like on one side is the women and on one side is the men. And on the women's side, it had a Bible verse. Wish I remembered what it was. I do not. But I was like, okay, whatever. This feels normal. We're being taught how to be good wives, how to let our husbands like do what they need to do, take care of the kid, like, because that's what you do in a business meeting. Of course, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Right. On the men's side, though, little did I know the things that my fiance at the time is hearing. When that portion of the leadership conference was over, he pulled me outside and he was like, "What is this? What are you talking about?" He's like, "This isn't you. This is not you." And I asked him to explain. And in the men's side, they were talking about how it's the man's job to retire their wife, that women belong in the home, that you aren't a bunch of expletive talking about the LGBTQIA community.
Jesus Christ.
My husband, fiance at the time, was like, there were people that genuinely, he was like, they were salivating at the idea of having a kept woman. And I was so turned off by that idea that I immediately was like, okay, then this isn't it for us. But it still took years of him trying to show me articles, trying to like do the math with me, try to explain like they're making money from the tools. There is no, like these people, there are lawsuits, do the math about it's $200 for a ticket for 20,000 people to rent something for a week. Where's all the rest of the money go? Like, and it still took me years of him just being very patient. We had many, many fights because it was like, when I made the realization that him questioning Amway was him questioning my entire life and how hurtful that was,
Yeah.
that's when I was able to articulate that. It freed me from the hurt and helped me see, like, okay, he's not trying to hurt me, but also helped him to be able to take his time a little bit more in helping me understand what was really happening. And I mean, without him, I just don't know. I don't know. I will be forever grateful for him loving me through the process of becoming unindoctrinated from
Yeah.
this life of the toxic positivity, the incredible like gender roles, like all the things that were so contrary to who I was at my core, but that was like placed on top that I had to feel like it was like this like figurine that I had to like operate within, you know, being able to break out of that it took a lot of time, but yeah, it just took a lot of time. But here I am now, so
Holy
it's okay.
shit.
Yeah.
But you're so right. The misogyny. I love that your then fiance, now husband, had the wherewithal to realize that that's a bad thing. Like that's a good person. Shout out
Yes.
to the
Yeah.
husband. We love that for
Yes.
you.
He's such
Because
a good person. Yeah.
I mean, like, but how easy is it for somebody who is the wrong person to
Right.
hear these ideals and run with them? I
Yeah.
mean, I can only imagine, and I've seen it, I've heard it time and time again. This type of a high control environment will put somebody in a position where if they already have narcissistic tendencies, it is absolutely going to amplify them. I mean, that is like the prime candidate to become a quote leader in
Yeah.
this type of an organization, to control others. And kind of going back to Stephen Hassan's bite model, if you guys are not familiar, we talk about it all the time here. You know, you have the behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. For me, it was not until I read through this that I realized I was in a cult, because
Mhm.
you have all these different levels of control. You know, you're talking about the emotional control where you can only be positive, or you have the thought control where you quite literally, from the moment you wake up, you have to listen to an audio And that's another portion about how they keep you involved, how they keep you excited. Just listen to another audio. If you're having a bad day, build your business, listen to an audio and read those specific books. And then behavior control, where you have to, they will quite literally like control your whole life. And one of the things on here is like where you live. This is a side note, and I don't know if you've ever seen this, but when I was involved, when I say they controlled where people lived, they were setting up houses where females were all roommates together, all singles, all from even different lines of sponsorship. They had like a set of rules that they all had to follow. Same thing with males. And they would host board plans at these houses. And the people would either have to stay up in their rooms or they would have to be out uh, prospecting.
That
Have
is
you ever seen that?
wild. That did not exist to my knowledge, but I've heard about that only from people connecting on TikTok. That is like another level to me of terrifying because that's another level too of that information control because there's
That
literally
part too.
no one in your life that is not going to become an echo chamber. Like you can't,
Yeah.
now you can't even have a roommate that's not an Amway. What? Oh, they know what they're freaking doing. They know
Yeah.
it so well. They understand human psychology to the point that they leverage it and extort it and it's bad news bears. Yeah.
It is. It takes ideology to like this whole new level.
Yeah.
And actually, one thing that you were talking about was that you saw a Bible verse on the women's side, and that was normal to you.
Yeah.
I would imagine that you grew up in a very religious home.
Yes. Yes. I did. Yeah.
Is that something that you carry with you today? The same
No.
values that you were raised with? I
Nope.
figured you were going to say that, but I had to ask.
Capital N, no. Yeah, I did. I went to a private school growing up, Christian school, like non-denominational school. Obviously, Amway is very religious. Went to all the Sunday morning, like whatever church services during the conferences, because that also makes sense. I did business. Everything was, yes, it was those three pillars, like we talked about before. That was our life. So it was the politics were always obviously very conservative. The religion was Christianity, the incredible patriotism that was just like ridiculous. And yeah, and then
Yeah.
Amway. Yeah, yeah. Like I didn't even know what the idea of like nationalism was. And when I started to learn, like again, like all these levels of deconstruction, it just is so terrifying because there's also like this point of, oh, so, okay, multi-level marketing is extorting the machine that capitalism is. Like capitalism forces people into these positions that is going to make them vulnerable for multi-level marketing companies to recruit them. And I'm not saying that like that's the plan and that's a one-for-one equation, of course, but you see that string of like, okay, Amway and these lines of sponsorship are making these incredible, like, and by incredible, I just mean huge contributions to politicians. And then like these decisions are made. And then it's like this gross cycle that just will go on forever because
Yeah.
of course the government isn't going to stop it because they're getting monetary donations. When multi-level marketing has its own lobby, its own caucus, like, come on, it's not going anywhere. Let's be real clear. Education
Yeah.
is the only way that we are going to keep people safe because it's not going away anytime soon. I mean, look, if it did, yes, I'll be in the front of the row, like with pom-poms and cheerleading and all the things, but we have to also be realistic that it is probably not going anywhere by the hands of our own government. It's going to have to be
Yeah.
just spreading the news. Yeah, getting the word out of how unsafe it is.
Yeah. I mean, you're
Yeah.
you're not wrong. You are 1010% correct. Like it's a very, my dad calls it a very large toxic enterprise, a dangerous enterprise. And
Yes.
it is dangerous because it does go to those depths. They do. Amway is huge. Like they would always teach that, right, as like a good thing. They would always say that, oh, the Amway Center, wherever, which I don't even think they own it anymore, but they own like a portion of a hockey team or whatever. They're like, you know, if Amway was so bad, they wouldn't be everywhere. But that's not how that works. It's the financial gain that all of these people are getting because of the little worker bees that they are keeping involved because these individuals are so easily, I don't want to say easily, but they were manipulated at a time in life where it made sense to join
Yeah,
something like Amway. And so following the time when you left, I'm sorry, I'm like bouncing a little bit of
that's
everywhere,
okay.
which
No
I
worries.
always do. But when you left, when did you like how much time I guess went by and when you really started to see, oh, this is bad. Like the deception with money and the fact that it's a cult. Like when were you able to say I was in a cult?
Probably within the last year, finally.
Wow.
Yeah, I was able to say I was raised in a cult. And that's because I think a lot of my healing has been exponentially sped up because of TikTok and because of the conversations I've been able to have and because of people reaching out to me and sharing their stories and the consistency with which my experience is validated. Because you do think, I think a lot of just culturally, there's so much shame because we are kind of swimming in this soup of religion and capitalism, like the way that our society is formulated around somebody else's imagination. Um, there's a lot of things that we don't talk about just as human beings. And of course, everybody has their own like comfortability, but I think a lot of those we don't talk about things because of shame, especially within multi-level marketing. You exist in shame. You leave with your head hung low, your tail between your legs because you're ashamed. Then when you realize like, oh, wait a second, no, I was manipulated, being scammed is looked at as being shameful. Like there's, you were victimized. There's no reason to feel shame. You might have regret, you might have sadness, you might, there's a million different emotions that you are going to feel, and they are all valid and they are all good because you have got to go through the grieving process. But to allow someone else to inform how you should view it and for you to carry any shame, it is still giving them power. And when people are able to put the shame away and communicate with one another, I went through that too. They did that to me too. I experienced that as well. It helps all of us be like, okay, wait, no, I'm no longer going to gaslight myself. This is what happened. I can
Yeah.
stand on the truth of what I experienced. And I have all these people next to me that experience the same thing. So all together we can continue to move forward and talk about it and educate people. And so because of all of that, it was like what might have taken me another couple of years if I ever really got there, being able to like actually say it with my actual mouth and my actual voice. Um, it might have taken a lot longer. And I'm forever grateful for the people that have decided to trust me with their stories and people that are still, even people that are in Amway that have conversations with me back and forth. I appreciate their energy in defending something. I get it. I totally, absolutely 100% get it because they need to believe that they are right. And so they have to think like, please tell me that this is not a lie, right? And I
Yeah.
understand you too. So yes, I just within the last year been able to say that. I think Sean Munger's podcast that he did with Roberta Blevins, episode
Yes.
136, if anybody wants to go look it up on Life After Normal. I will forever plug that episode specifically because that's a lot.
Seriously.
Yes. And I know that so many people have been helped because of him exposing the history. And this is a huge ass machine behind Amway that Amway allows to exist, that Amway, like it could be any other MLM. It just happened to be the people that were in Amway at the time that did
Yep.
this thing that I believe has affected society in a way that we will never, ever, ever understand the ways that it has
Yeah.
robbed us of people's
Yeah.
potential. It's terrifying and heartbreaking.
Wow. I mean, I will totally commend you because holy shit, like the realization that you were in a cult is bad enough. And then you have to realize like, oh, my parents like my parents raised me in this environment. And then that's a whole nother like can of worms to even start to try and process. And you're right. There's so much embarrassment. And I think it was Nandi is a regular here. I believe she and I were talking about the fact that like the fear of being shamed will keep you involved because that's what you told people you were going to do. And it's like, well, if you leave, how many I told you so's are you going to get? And I think that's one of the biggest things I want to help try to spread awareness to is we can't keep telling people I told you so. I don't care like whether you hated the fact that they were involved or not. The I told you so's that they're anticipating are why they stay. And it's very similar, and I always will make this comparison. It's very similar to being in a domestic violence relationship because, again, you're portraying to the world that you're in this very happy go lucky relationship, but because you've given that to the world, you're so afraid of what they will see if you leave, if you ever were to show the bruises, the mental bruises, the things that's actually going on the inside. And it's very the same when you leave a cult or an MLM. And I think that that's very important is for people to understand that you have to treat it with such a vulnerable lens.
Yeah.
That I think is very very important. I just
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if there'll ever come a time where people will be 100% comfortable talking about the fact that they had been in a cult or
Yeah.
exposed to one. But I hope that bringing awareness will help show individuals that you want to stay the fuck away from this one. In my humble
Mhm.
opinion, of course, if you're 18, do whatever the fuck you want. But I'm going to tell you, I don't personally think you should join. But again, I can't tell you what to do. Um, but also just the gravity that Amway holds. And also, yes, I never knew what episode it was. Episode 136, Life After MLM. I always talk about that episode, the tool scam, because that's what made me see it.
Yes.
That holy shit, this is they the tools business has always been around to make money off of others.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
That's the scary part about it.
Mhm.
So, kind of shifting gears a little bit towards that aspect of it,
Yeah.
did you ever know that people at, and I think it's the same throughout all tools businesses, but did you know that people at the platinum level or above were getting paid on the tools?
Never. Never. Ever, 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 ever. And, you know, that's the thing that I think is so important for people to understand because you are told constantly and such emerald from such and such state is coming down, spending their time away from their family to pour into you because they're such a servant and they just want
Yes.
to help and they have such a heart for this business and they're like
Yeah.
speaking in this flowery language. Meanwhile, you're paying $7 to go into like a high school auditorium with several hundred other people. So dude man can like just talk to hear himself talk for 2 hours and then take some sort of like then you're going to take him out to eat for the night owl and like pay for his meal, pay for his gas. Like it's just, it's mind boggling because you are always told that. And I'll just like, little sidestep story time. One of the oldest lines of sponsorship is Brit Worldwide. And um, some of your listeners might know this, but at one point, Bill Britt had an affair, and I don't think he was forced to retire, but my understanding, and I'm sure that there was more nuance to this, but my understanding was that people were given the option to stay or to go to another line of sponsorship, which then would become their line of affiliation because they were not directly sponsored by whoever they would be mentored by, quote unquote, mentored by. And I know that the talking line when that was going down was that whatever diamond you're going to tie in with is so generous They are taking all of these people in. They will be mentoring them because they believe in the business and they believe in these people. And aren't they amazing? And they're not getting any benefit because they were not directly sponsored by them. These people's PV of all these new downlines that they're acquiring. The PV is not going to go to these new diamonds because they were not directly in the line of sponsorship. Never once ever was it revealed or discussed to the little peons below platinum that these new diamond ships, these new whoever you were going to be reporting to, they're going to be getting all of your tool money because now you're buying that line of sponsorships tools. It's always painted as these people are so good. They are so giving, which is why God blessed them to become whatever gemstone they're going to become. And it's just such a lie. It's just a bold-faced lie. It is a misrepresentation of the truth. And a little like snippet at the end of an audio recording that says that, some people might get some benefit on the side from the sale of these things or some other investments or whatever disclaimer they have, that does not cut it. That does not cut it because you are misinforming consumers. You are defrauding them. And it's been legally unchecked, and that is why it continues to this day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I heard that so many times. The income depicted may come from sources other than Amway, such as the sale of business and training tools or outside investments. I will always fucking
I'm
remember that.
so impressed. You guys, she just quoted it from memory.
That was 5 years ago. I haven't listened to the
Holy
audio since.
shit.
But actually, I think, and additionally, I think somebody actually sent me the ending of that.
That's
I
amazing.
think it was our guest Rose. Shout out.
Props to Rose.
But yeah, she like that is something that never I and they speed it up, of course, towards the end. And of course,
Right.
they have just a little bit of clapping at the end because everybody stops the audio at that point, and then they
Yeah.
speed up this dude. I think it's a woman now. Somebody saying those exact words verbatim, and never once did I even consider it because when I didn't even never once. And you're right, it's not enough because they don't ever sit down and talk to you about how the money works. It's just a very like, it's almost like herding people in just fast enough for them to not question things because there's so much you throw at them. You're telling them
Yeah.
to read a book, you're sitting down with them, you're telling them how much you care about them, you're love bombing these people. And then slowly you're letting that you're slowly gaining their trust. But and I remember you saying this, that this has been a term forever. You tell them if they ask questions, they're not prepared for this information just yet. They are not ready. Let me tell
Yeah.
you, there's never a point in time of quote readiness that they will ever talk to you about the compensation plan. And at any point, have you ever understood the compensation plan?
I did a very long TikTok once where I was like, okay, I am going to understand this thing. And I'm going to tell you something. I think I understood it for maybe 5 seconds. And then it's like, as soon as you're like, it's so squirrely and it is absolutely intended for you to never really be able to think like, okay, how much product actually has to move through my business for me to make $45,000 a year? What does that actually look like? How many dollars equal the PV and how many people does that actually mean? And never. No, it is a like spider web of ridiculous percentages and qualifiers and brackets and all the things. And BV,
Yeah.
PV, Q, no, they do it on purpose. They do it on purpose. There's no way they don't.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the leaders, they like inflate numbers. I
Mm-hmm.
was going back through one of the audios doing exactly kind of what you were talking about, right? Like trying to figure out if the numbers that this guy is telling me are real or they're bullshit. He would always say, and of course, every tools business has their own little qualifications to make people feel just a little bit more special, right? So I was a part of Worldwide, and Worldwide had your Eagle ship, right? That's your 6 people wide, and your Double Eagle, it's just 12 people wide. He would always throw out these bullshit numbers and say our eagles make $1,000 a month and our double eagles make like I don't remember how much, but it was more than that, 1,500 maybe. And I remember sitting there looking at and recording and talking about that's not true, because you're talking about if in a perfect scenario, even if you had like six couples doing 300 PV with the percentage that you're getting back, that's not adding up. And so obviously those numbers are bullshit. And I started to really understand. I was like, oh, because they would one of the things that one of our leaders, oh my God, I'll call him the club owner again, because fuck that guy. I hate him. But he would always say, we make so much more than this. We blow this out of the water, but this is legally what we have to tell you. Right.
Right.
And it's like, but how? But they never sit down and explain, because if they did, they would have to acknowledge that they're making money off of the tools. And that is the inspiration, the motivation for recruitment. And what does that tell us, everybody? They'd have to admit it, it's a pyramid scheme. So,
Dun, dun, dun.
and that is the part that I think a lot of people who are still involved, if I feel like if they had that information, I don't know, part of me thinks that maybe they'd start to question things, but I also, maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they don't care. It shocks me. You were raised in Amway. You were around Amway for, I mean, your parents weren't for 50 years and you were in your entire childhood, plus being involved for a brief period of time yourself.
Yeah,
And with all of this background, personal background with Amway, at no point was
never.
there any indication to you that there was extra money coming from the tools? Holy shit.
And here's what people need to know, like about indoctrination, right? And about the atmosphere, because so many people, and I'm sure you get this too. How do people not see it? How do people not see it?
Yep.
I had a poster on my wall growing up. It was like a 3-panel cartoon kind of looking thing. And the first panel was just two people. Some will, they're like shaking hands, whatever. Some won't, was the second one with like one little stick figure walking away. And then the next one just said next with the person like shrugging, like, okay, move on. You are taught from the very beginning that the people that understand what Amway is are good. They are trustworthy. They deserve your respect and your ear, and what they have to teach you and share with you is good. Period. End of question. And everybody else, and again, cult mentality, right? You got to separate out the people that are going to have any sort of reason. But within that idea of like creating this sense that these people are your mentors, quote unquote, are godlike. The higher you get, they are better humans.
Yep.
So when they tell you this person's coming over from Iowa, driving through the night, he must have had 45 excess on his way. He's definitely popping rhodiola. And you're like, oh my gosh, he's like so amazing. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
And like, he's self-sacrificing. And so you're willfully paying your $7 to go into the gym at the high school to watch this dude like speak because he's obviously so good. He
Yeah.
would never take a cut of that money. Obviously, that's just money to host the space and to maybe
Yes.
reimburse his gas, but that's it. And it's just because you just don't even, your brain stops questioning these people
Yeah.
because they are held in such regard. You have to trust them. Everything that comes out of their mouth is correct and truthful. And also, you don't have time to question because you are working your ass off. You don't have the cognition to question because you're exhausted. Like,
Yep.
it is so diabolical and purposeful that you just never even think to question. So as a
Yeah.
child, I never, even when we had this huge shift of lines of sponsorship and lines of affiliation, never once did I ever think, oh, well, the people that are inheriting hundreds of people must make more money off of them. No, I never thought that for a moment. And it
Right.
speaks volumes, not to the lack of intelligence of the participants, it speaks
Of
volumes
course.
to the capacity for manipulation of what this actually is. And to understand that is to really realize how dangerous it is. No one is above that level of manipulation. No one. And to think that you are, you're a prime victim. Knock it off. Humble
Yeah.
yourself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's funny because you're absolutely right. And they have to find the right pinpoint, and they know that's
Yes.
how. the conversation starts with the shoes at
Yes.
Target.
Yes.
It starts, and we as humans, when you're not thinking of the fact that you have to be aware of
Mhm.
this sort of encounter happening, right? You're just living your fucking day and
Yeah.
you've never had this happen to you before. Somebody comes up to you and they tell you, you have, oh my God, I love your shoes. I've
Mhm.
had a bad day. Thank you so much for complimenting my shoes. Oh man, where did you get them? Oh, you know what? I actually got them at work. I got them at Ross. Oh, you work at Ross. How's that going? Well, I
Mhm.
had a shitty customer today. So, because people want to be heard, people want to be listened to. And
Yeah.
that's what they're taught is talking the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. People
Yeah.
love to talk about themselves. Everybody's quote favorite word is I. When you get a group picture, who's the person you look for? Is yourself. They know, and you're absolutely right. You cannot question these things because it starts with somebody caring enough about you to ask,
Yeah.
especially if you are carrying yourself with a certain demeanor. And if they hit that pain point because you had a shitty customer, because you work at Ross or whatever shoe store where you got your cute shoes, you're going to tell them, nah, is that where you plan on being in the next 5 years?
Right.
No, of course not. Who want, I mean, unless that's your dream job, please understand. Good for you. I think everybody has to do something that they love. If that's you, I commend you. I really do. Like no shame. But most people who are younger, right? They approach, between the ages of 18. Well, that's the youngest they can go, but they'll go younger. As everybody
Mhm.
has maybe heard in Antonia's story, her twin slash triplet, there's three of them, but it was the two girls who got recruited when they were in high school before their senior year.
Yeah.
So, but 18 and maybe 25 when you look vulnerable, right? So
Yeah.
most of the time, no, you're not going to want to do that because maybe they're a college student. Oh, you know what?
Mhm.
Actually, no. I'm going to college to be a psychologist. Oh, that's amazing. Well, where's that going to take you? How are you planning on becoming a psychologist? Well, I want to own my own practice. Oh, you want to start your own business? You know what? I actually have a friend. Let me tell you, I say this because somebody, told me this, right? So I'm telling you this because somebody that I know was actually in the mental health field and they were actually able to create their own business. And not only were they able to create their own business, they were actually able to leave the field entirely because they decided that, hey, I want to do my own business instead, own my time, stop trading time for dollars, right? And I would actually love to connect you with them. I don't know if they can do anything for you. I don't know if you make any promises. Well, I can't make any promises, but I'd love to introduce you to them just on the off chance that maybe they can help you, maybe they can't. What do you say? That's how it starts.
Yep. Every single time, beat for beat. And that's the thing too. You have to know they are toying with your emotions. They're
Yeah.
validating you. That's great. They are finding something that you have in common. I knew someone who did that thing. They're painting a picture of what your future is actually going to be. That person doesn't have to work anymore. Isn't that amazing? And then they dangle it like a freaking carrot and they YOLO you. Like, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to make it. I don't know if, and, we'll see if it works out. My mentor is really busy. No, they are not. They are never, ever, 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 ever too busy to
No.
meet with you. You can say no now and say yes in 4 years. And they'll be like, I knew you'd come around. Like, they are toying with your emotions. They want to get this idea of like, I can't miss out. This sounds like they don't need me, which means I must need them. No, 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 no. They need you so freaking bad. They are
Yeah.
choking on the words. I don't know if it'll be a good fit. Every single time I heard that, every time, I'm like, that's a lie. That's a lie. Is this person alive? Great. That is the person that they want. Like, do
Yeah.
you have a pulse? You qualify.
That's it.
Congratulations.
Quite literally. Well, then, because we were talking about before I started recording, there's no checks and balances. They don't give a
No,
fuck what your background was. If
nope.
you have a criminal history, they will tell you from Yale to jail. Doesn't
Yep.
matter who you are. Everybody can build this business. And we were talking about that because if you guys haven't listened already, please go back. I talk about one of my personal upline who I would find out 5 years after being in the business, mind you, that he pled guilty to running an illegal Ponzi scheme maybe a year or two before he joined Worldwide. And that's the guy who went at whatever precious metal, I think he's a platinum, to give people the advice that's in the recording in that episode. Nobody
Yes.
cares. It literally,
Nobody
if you have
cares.
a pulse
Yeah,
and they can train you, if as long as you can make enough money to do what they tell you to do, it doesn't fucking matter.
exactly. And that is why it is so, it's not just dangerous financially. It's not just dangerous for your mental health. It is physically dangerous. You do not know who you are putting your children around. Like,
Yep.
hear me, please hear me. Like, because you bring these people into the fold, because remember, the people that say yes to Amway are good, and the people that say no are bad. So, everybody that you're bringing over for team phonings at the convention, whatever, they must be good people. And now they're in your home and they're with your
Yeah.
children, and you know diddly shit about them. Like,
Yeah.
not really, because they have to maintain their toxic positivity. They have to be professional because it is a business, technically. They have to, like, and you just, there's no background check. People could be lying their faces off to you about their past, their
Yeah.
dreams. And a person that wants to hurt people can see this for what it is, and they
Yeah.
know. And it's the same with any group of people, in my opinion, that is experiencing any level of indoctrination. There are just going to be people who have ill intent that are going to leverage that, and they will
Yeah.
victimize people and not even think twice about it. And
Yeah.
you're putting those kinds of people potentially with your kids. Like, don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they'll also make it sound like a privilege. Like you're
Yep.
privileged to bring your children around such individuals, right?
Exactly.
And actually, kind of going back to your childhood really quick, the revolving door of people.
Yes.
What was that like?
So, really bad. Yeah, I definitely have, like, I don't know, I've been doing a lot of therapy, and attachment styles come up a lot. And an avoidant attachment style is like in my DNA at this point, because it was like a turnstile. It was every week at those product pickups. You know, there were some that were there all the time for a few years, but then there were others that came and went. There were friends that I made that came and went. There were babysitters that came and went. They were kids that I babysat that came and went. And it very much affected my capacity to hang on to relationships. Um, because yeah, I mean, I just saw all these people coming and going, and how easily I saw it demonstrated. Oh, these are your best friends because you're going to do life together and travel the world
Yep.
and go to the beaches of the world together. But the
Yes.
moment that they quit, we don't see them
They're horrible
anymore.
people.
Yeah, yeah, we're gone. They're gone. And so it's like you just learn to not become attached, but you think you're
Yeah.
attached, but your mind isn't like letting you, you know? So it's like this weird,
Yeah.
it's like you're living a double speak kind of thing, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
It does. Absolutely. I think it is
Yeah.
like a double life. Like you have
Yeah.
to, one, you have to protect yourself because at some point through the process, you start to realize, okay, I can't get close to these people at
Right.
all. And at first, I feel like everybody kind of does. Everyone like gets so used to hanging on to the people that maybe they first recruit, or maybe to the person who recruited them. And you gain such an attachment for these people, and you feel as though you're going to maintain that attachment to the people that you bring around. Well, then you
Yeah.
start to realize these people aren't sticking around.
Right.
At no point are they going to become your best friends for life. That's just not going to fucking happen. At any point through, whether they become a gemstone or not, they can leave, and they will leave at some point.
Yeah.
And you have to start to detach yourself. And that's one thing that they always talk about too in their levels of manipulation are to think with your mind, not your heart. Don't react on emotions. Don't do it on emotion. Like that's the people who aren't growing. They're thinking with their emotions. They're not thinking logically.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, okay. And then you start to harden yourself. And then
Yes.
you become similar to them where you're only an outer shell. And I
Exactly.
think that that is so devastating. But I could see as a kid, like you become besties with like this kid, like you got fast friends, like when you go to the park, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you sadly never see them again. You're like, oh my God, you were my best friend for like an hour,
Right.
but it's happening all the time. It's not
Yes.
just, oh, you had that one experience at the park when you were a kid, maybe like a handful of times, if that. It's happening
Yeah.
almost, it sounds like it could have happened every week.
Yeah. I mean, it was constant. I mean, my godparents, one of my godparents was like, their daughter was my best friend. And when they got a divorce and they decided to not continue with Amway, it's like that relationship was gone. And the relationship with the parents was gone. And I just remember like fast forwarding, I don't know, maybe we hadn't seen each other in like a decade. And when I saw her again, I was like, I don't even know where to begin to talk because I couldn't, like, I had lost the capacity, maybe not, maybe I didn't ever have it, of like just connecting with someone on a really, on a genuine, real level. I mean, I remember reading How to Win Friends and Influence People when I was 12 and thinking, I remember going to my dad and being like, yeah, I know all this already. And now as an adult, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, as a 12-year-old, you knew how to manipulate people. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that it
Yeah.
was manipulation. It was like, oh, people want to be complimented. Well, I compliment people all the time. Well, because I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in order to create a relationship is you compliment people. So that's what I do. You know, is it because you're just replicating as a child what is being demonstrated to you. And when your parents are like living how to win friends and influence people, they're raising children how to win friends and influence people, then as a kid, you know how to win friends and influence people. But like
Yep.
this book, which is neither, you don't win a friend. What the fuck is that? Like, give me a break. Yeah. Yeah. So
Wow.
it affects I have just recently been able to really comprehend, like, oh, okay, that's why I couldn't maintain relationships. That's why I couldn't. And it's friendships, right? It's like if they're not directly in my life because they're people that I work with or people that I go to school with, it's like it's really hard to find the energy and the wherewithal and the confidence to maintain those relationships because
Yeah.
I'm so avoidant. Like it deeply, deeply, deeply in my gut. I'm like, I can't, I can't. It's very, very hard. It's like it's a struggle every single day to make that like be
Aw.
quiet. It's wild. Don't do that to your children.
Yeah. But it's so true. It's so, oh my gosh. And I'm going to connect the dots here just because this is how in my life it made sense in the same regards, but not in a cult whatsoever. But the inability to maintain relationships, right? Because people were constantly coming and going. When I was a kid, my mom was so unhealthy that she never maintained friends. I mean, she would have people become fast friends, best friends overnight. And within maybe a few months, we would never see them again, or she hated them. And or it was an up and down relationship where they said something that she didn't agree with, and it was spewing all of their gossip. And if my family members who want to go after me are listening, because I know some of you guys do, I knew your guys' gossip when I was 14. Sorry, but any marital issues, or well, I'll just stick with that one. I knew about when I was fucking 14. Sorry, side note. But it's so challenging as an adult to look back and be like, holy shit, I either didn't make good friends, like the people that I selected as my friends were not people that were actually good friends. They were people that I just wanted to attach myself to because I wanted a best friend. You see all these people who have like, I've been best friends since we were in kindergarten, I've been best friends since middle school or high school or whatever. I'm like, I don't have that. Like, I have friends who are like people that I've known for that period of time, but nobody that I talk to every single day. Like, and of course there are people that I can reconnect with. Like I had one roommate who was literally the most amazing person. She was my roommate through Amway too. I feel
Bless
so
her.
bad, but we're still friends. I love her every time I see her. But when I look at the friendships that people have, I'm so jealous
Yeah,
because I'm like, I was not taught the emotional capacity to
right.
actually see what it's like to maintain a friendship or a like a romantic partnership. That's another thing that my mom was incapable of doing. And it really, it kind of, like you said, spider webs, right? It goes throws you. every aspect of your life is impacted when you have the inability to connect with others the way that maybe a regular family would be able
Yeah,
to do.
you're absolutely right. Yes, it's bizarre. And it is, it's like clearly our upbringings were very different, and yet it still has like ultimately it's how have you shown up for your children to demonstrate how to do this? Because that's
Yeah.
like ultimately who else are they going to learn from? Yeah, it's just it's very when you realize that it's like, oh shit. God, like I mean, my husband has friends that he's been friends with his entire life, and I'm just so thankful that he has that because I kind of get that by proxy, but at the same time it's like I've never been able to maintain, and it's 100% on me. Like I have to
Yeah.
understand that it's like, oh, it's because I could not allow myself to be vulnerable enough because I
Yeah.
never learned how. And that's really, and it's, I mean, I also fully recognize like boo hoo. It
Yeah.
is
Oh, of
however,
course.
like, yeah, it's like it, you just have to understand like that's where that comes from. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, how do you fix it? You know? Um,
Yeah.
because human beings need each other. And these MLMs make it so that it doesn't matter who it is. It's just a
Yeah.
body. Is it a
Yep.
person? Okay, that's all that matters. Do you have six of them? Do they have six people? Okay, it doesn't matter who, it just matters how
Yep.
many. Yeah.
Wow. We have to keep in mind, you guys, that this is years worth of time that we are talking about. So as you can imagine, this is going to take multiple parts. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to end it here because I feel like there's just still so many burning questions that I have that just because there's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
many aspects and so much nuance to it that it's like, holy shit, it's a deep
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
um, but what are maybe some last words that you have for people after everything at this point to where we've kind of spoken to right now? What are some things that you have as a last thought?
I would just say that I think something that Amway understand, well, not Amway, yes, Amway, but lines of sponsorship understand about people is that human beings have the capacity to love really hard. They have the capacity to dream really big. I mean, human beings have done incredible, beautiful, wonderful things. And these lines of sponsorship will take the things that matter the most to you and they will quite literally use those things against you. And if you have a sensation that something is off, you have got to listen to it. You absolutely have got to listen to it. Um, yeah, I think that's yeah, just listen to your gut. That's your that's sometimes all that you've got. That's telling you this is not okay and you need to back out. Because even if your mind is like, but they said it's for my kids, but your gut is saying, no, I don't think so. Your mind is trying to protect you. Your literal sense of self is trying to protect you, and it's you are worth listening to that. And if it's a good plan, if it's a good deal, it'll still be there in 6 months. If it's so good, it won't matter when you join. Why does it have to be right this moment? It doesn't. You deserve to take enough time to make sure that you know what you're committing to.
Well said. I wish I had a clap track. Well, clap. Okay, so we've talked about this a number of times that you are on TikTok.
Yes.
Where can people follow you on TikTok, and what other social media where they can find you?
I'm at the anti-MLM kid on TikTok. I also have an Instagram account, but it's the same username. I really only just have that if people want to send me screenshots of stuff that they want to share or connect with me in messages over there. I don't post over there. But yeah, come hang out on TikTok. I would love to hear any stories that anyone wants to share or just conversations that anybody wants to have. I'm more than willing to have them.
And if you need a little bit of entertainment, you guys can go read the comments from the pro people. I get a little bit of chuckle whenever
Exactly.
I need to be reminded that my life could be worse. I go and read those.
Exactly.
Well, I am so grateful for you coming on and I'm wanting to talk to me. I love the fact that we connect so well. I even though like you said our upbringings are so different, there's still so many similarities, and I love the connection that I can build with people now that I know how to do so at least a little bit better than I was. But I'm so grateful for your time and for your willingness to come and be vulnerable and talk about this, because I hope that more children of Amway people come forward and talk about their experiences, so that way people who are at the very least curious, who are still in, who are looking for that information, right? When they're looking up Amway, that they could see what the life could look like of their children. And obviously everybody's going to be different, but is that an emotional turmoil that you're really willing to risk for your
Right,
child?
right.
And I hope that people learn for that. So again, thank you so much. If you guys want to be like the lovely anti MLM kid here, and you guys want to come and share a story, it doesn't have to be MLM related or cult related for that matter. If you guys have anything you want to come and talk about that's trauma related, I know these are heavy topics, but I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to help people share their stories. Please DM me on Instagram at exesandt.podcast, or email me at DANI at exesandtpodcast.com. I always struggle through that. But again, thank you so much. And we will catch you guys in part 2.
Thank you.